Now we're driving through Barraba. This is a small town on the southwestern side of the New England tableland in northern New South Wales, on the banks of the Manila River. Just a small little country town as part of a drive through the Fossickers way. So you can drive through this area where a great deal of fossicking was done. There was gold in this area, and a little bit further north we're up into the gem country. There is sapphires and all kinds of cool stuff up there. A little bit further south, Fossickers Way curls around down through Manila, Tamworth and over to Nundle, where there were other big gold rushes back in the 1860s. So we're travelling through today on our way to a national park which is right near the town of Manila. So we've just passed the Manila River and we're heading down now to the point where the Manila joins onto the Namoy River, and that's where Manila is. And just a little bit to the west of that is the national park that we're driving to. What's the national park we're driving to today, Jane?
I have no idea.
It's the Warraba National Park. And so we're heading down there and we're going to be camping for the next few days and enjoying ourselves immensely. What sort of things are we going to do, Jane?
I think we're going to try a hand at fishing again.
Fishing!
We got worms again and lures.
So, we're on our way. It's going to be a fine time. A couple of days of relaxing and enjoying ourselves and just being one with nature.
Well, I don't know if we go that far. We still have our little comforts of our tent and that, so... Oh, and here's the silos too. The painted silos coming up. We'll have to swing around some.
There are the silos at Barraba. Now I don't know who that bloke is, but he's some sort of water diviner. He's carrying some water diviners. The first European to come through this area was Oxley in 1818. He was on his way through to try and find a route to the inland sea that was supposed to be out in the middle of Australia. He'd already had a go a bit further south and failed, and then he headed up this way from, I think he came up from Bathurst, and he headed up this way, and then he tried to find his way further west over some of these local rivers, and then eventually the terrain became too poor for him and he was not able to continue on. But he did report that a lot of this area was very good for grazing and for opening up, and so not too long after that the graziers started to push up into this area. Further south a little bit, they were coming up out of the Hunter Valley in the 1820s through into up into this area, and then Alan Cunningham, a botanist and early explorer of Australia, he came up this way in the 1820s and pushed on right up through into the Darling Downs, and the graziers followed him basically all the way up, all the way through from the Hunter Valley. A bit further west is the Liverpool Plains, and up through the New England tablelands, and then right on through into the Darling Downs, and all very fine, rich countryside, great farming area. And all of those areas were being settled through basically from the 1820s right through the 1840s. A lot of the land was being taken up. An out of the way road at the moment. This isn't the main road down through the area. These small towns were fighting to get infrastructure and roads built back in those days. Everything was being transported by bullock teams back in those days. There were no decent roads, and in a lot of cases there weren't bridges over the rivers through the 1870s, 1880s and so on. In the 1880s they built the Great North Line through from Sydney. So it went from Sydney to Newcastle, then from Newcastle up to Maitland. It was built I think by 1878, and then through the 1880s it was built up to Tamworth, and then it pushed on up further north. The 1884 it was at Glen Innes, by 1886 it was Tenterfield, and in 1887 they connected through to Queensland. The And so that was a huge game changer. But you can imagine for the 40 years before that, all of these properties and all these farmers, they had little bush tracks, they had bullock teams, they had horse teams, they had all of this kind of gear, and they were still trying to find the best way through the mountains, trying to find the best way through. Even here where we are, we're roughly 600 metres above sea level, and it's uphill all the way from further south. And each of these mountain ranges has to be crossed. You have to be able to get across it somehow. If you think about things like the early bullock teams that were bringing through all of the goods, they were bringing up the goods from Sydney that couldn't be made locally, and they were bringing back the harvest, the wool and the beef, droving the cattle and everything else, bringing back the timber that was being felled. They all had to go through on the bullocks, and those wagons didn't have any brakes. So back in those days, the only way they could slow them down was actually to tie or to chain a log to the back of the bullock dray, and to try to use that friction to slow the thing down so that it didn't accelerate and then run over and kill all the bullocks and the bullock drive. You can only imagine how tough it would have been trying to cross these rivers before they built any bridges. And every time there's a flood on, they might have to just sit and camp for weeks waiting for the water to go down before it was safe to go through.
It's a little bit hard to tell, but it seems a little bit drier here. Though it's still green.
Yeah, I get the feeling it's been terrible dry for a while, and that last bit of rain that we had a month or so ago was giving everything a bit of a boost. Earlier in the drive we could certainly see plenty of trees that were dying off. Even the river oaks and so on were turned quite orange and yellow and didn't look very happy. Through this stretch of the road, quite a few of the gum trees seem to have died off or died back. The name Manila, relating to the river we were just on and the town we're driving towards, is from the local indigenous people, and it refers to the water or to the river. And there's a story saying that the spelling of Manila was changed in the 1800s by a sailor who had visited the Manila in the Philippines. And previous to that, Manila was spelt in a different way, probably phonetically from however it was originally understood from the local indigenous people. So it was the Gamilaroi people who live in this area, and they have a pretty widespread area. They seem to stretch basically down towards Tamworth and then right the way up, nearly all the way up to Queensland and across out further west. Back Creek, Oaky Creek.
And you have the Mile Creeks.
Yeah.
10 Mile, 9 Mile. And Swampy Creek.
These little remnant areas of woodland give us a bit of a reminder of what this whole area would have looked like 200 years ago. There would have been very little clearing, and most of the area would have been various types of woodland. This type of open woodland with some grasses at the bottom and more dense woodlands. A whole range of different ecosystems supporting different animals, different plants. Though we're on the western edges of the New England, we've still got a bit of altitude here, and it still would support some pretty cold winters. But the vegetation here is all very different to the stuff that we're used to from a bit further east and a bit further north. And so that's a bit of a recap of the drive in to our camping trip in the Warrabar National Park, as we explore the region a little bit and try to understand a little bit more about the history of the area that we go into, because we like to do that, to get a bit of an understanding of the area and its past, and that helps us to appreciate it a little bit more. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching, and if you'd care to give us a like, that really helps the channel out, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you in the next one. So don't forget, there's more content coming of this trip, and that'll be released over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Thank you, and bye-bye.